Hello YouTube, it's Gadgetmainia here. Today I've got a review of the Moto E. I'll just quickly run you through the device again. On the front we've got the 4.3 inch display at a resolution of 540 by 960, giving a pixel density of 256 ppi. It's Corning Gorilla Glass 3. We've got the front facing speaker and the microphone. On the bottom we've got a micro USB charging port. On that side there's nothing, but obviously you can't see because it's in a case, but I'm sorry about that, but I can't actually get the phone out of this case. On the top we've got the 3.5mm headphone jack and a noise cancelling microphone, and on the other side we've got the power button and volume buttons. I'll just run you through the specs. It's got 4GB of storage and a 1GB of RAM. Expandable storage up to 32GB micro SD card. 3G Wi-Fi 802.11bg and then Bluetooth 4.0, micro USB 2 primary camera, which is the only one. Is a 5 megapixel with a resolution of 2559 by 1944. Does video at 480p at 30 fps. It runs KitKat and will be upgradable to Lollipop in the future. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 200 dual-core 1.2 GHz processor and an Adreno 302 chip. Just going to do some comparisons with things like Google Now with Siri and do a benchmark of the phone. I'll just run it in Geekbench to see what score we get. I'll come back when the actual score's done. Up the score, as you can see, it's just uploading the results to Geekbench to compare with other devices. We've got a single core score of 326 and multi-core of 605. We'll just see where it comes in with other devices. If you see, it just comes just below the Moto G, which is what you'd expect in a single core. And in the multi-core, it comes, what's the multi-core score? 600. It just comes below the original Nexus, which of course was a high-end phone at the time, and this is one of the budget phones, so you wouldn't expect it to be beating things like that, because they were killers at the time. This just actually confirms all the specs and the version of Android it was running. Next I'm just going to compare it to Siri on an iPhone 4S. Do I need an umbrella today?
Yes, the forecast for today in Hanlajir is 12 degrees with rain.
So Siri was marginally behind there. Let's try another one. Just ask it a slightly more complicated question that should give an interesting answer. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck chucked wood?
According to Wikipedia, a more concrete answer was published by the Associated Press in 1988, which reported that a New York Fish and Wildlife technician named Richard Thomas had calculated the volume of dirt in a typical 25 to 30 foot long woodchuck burrow, and had determined that if the woodchuck had moved an equivalent volume of wood, it...
So Siri just gives the straight answer, and Google goes more in depth with a longer history lesson about it. Set a reminder for 7 o'clock tonight.
What's the reminder?
Looking for reminders due today. You don't have any reminders that are due today.
So Siri misheard me.
Here's your reminder for today at 1900. Do you want to set it?
No. 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 Comparison of Siri versus Google Now. Google Now comes back ever so slightly quicker from what we've been seeing opposed to Siri. But Siri gives just the basic information that you ask for, but Google gives an awful lot more info than you want. So Sort of depends on if you like an awful lot of information or just the basics. And if we just compare, look at the camera on it, photos, the quality is not actually the greatest. If we look, this was me trying to do a close-up of an iPhone, and it's all very blurred on it. And then if we look at, you can't adjust it, and then we've got a picture of my Mac. I tried to do it's very grainy, and part of it is not like the camera, which is why I was focusing on didn't actually focus. It's a very narrow camera. The actual lens is quite narrow. The colours are washed out. Just to compare, I'll bring in an iPhone 4S with the same photo. That seems all in focus, and the colours are an awful lot better. And then if you compare to that, it's all sort of very washed out colour wise compared to the iPhone. The problem is you can't adjust any of the settings on the stock camera app itself. You can't adjust anything from focus to focus area or adjust any of the settings. You have to deal with what it is. Now to move on to my conclusion of the review. For the Moto E isn't a bad phone as the budget smartphones go, but it's certainly not a phone that I'd go for if I was going to have one of the Motorola phones on a 2-year contract, because for the price, not much more. You can get things like the Moto G, the original Moto G, or the new Moto G, which is far better than the Moto E. If you aren't fussed about the camera on it, it's a good phone. As long as you don't need to use camera, I'd recommend it. But if you like taking photos on a phone, I wouldn't recommend the Moto E purely because of the limitations on the camera app. This has been a review of the Motorola Moto E. Like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, comment and subscribe to stay up to date with latest videos.